From the campus of the University of Texas at Austin, the Lyndon Baines Johnson Library presents an address by Barbara Jordan. Lotus Rhodes, Associate Dean of the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs, will introduce Professor Jordan.
As you've heard, there are a lot of tasks, a lot of assignments that go into making for a successful conference. One of the easier assignments in that complex is introducing Barbara Jordan. You don't have to do very much. Most of you know her or surely know of her and are anxious to hear her. I would like to say one thing in thinking about this conference and thinking about Barbara. I was reminded of the recent program on PBS, The Power of Myth. Some of you may have seen that, Bill Moyers and Joe Campbell. In thinking about Barbara, I changed that a little bit and think about the power of will, because I think that statement is expressed in reality when I think of Barbara Jordan. It's my pleasure then to introduce to you one of my favorite individuals, Professor Jordan.
One nation, indivisible, colon, true or false, rhetoric or reality. One nation, indivisible, true or false, rhetoric or reality. Now, you know those words, one nation, indivisible, come out of the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. One nation. We want to be one. We want to be single. We want to have a single end, a single goal, a single purpose. We would like that. We would like for that single end, goal, purpose to be the common good. That is what we would like. What a great day it would be if, for just an instant, we could suppress our preoccupation with self, with private wishes, private desires, private gains, profits. What a great day it would be if for just an instant we could forget about I, me, and think about us, we, community, the public interest, the common weal. That would be terrific. The reports which helped spawn this conference, which Mr. Katzenbach talked about this morning, those reports were presented a couple of decades ago. The reports identified the Kerner Commission, the Katzenbach report. Those reports identified wrongs and made certain suggestions for ways we could correct those wrongs. We were very serious about those undertakings, the follow-up of those reports. We were serious about it. And we have failed in the action that we planned to take to actualize the recommendations of those reports. We have failed. Why do I say that? I say we have failed because we are a divided people. We are separate. We seem to speak the rhetoric of one nation, of community, but it seems to be very elusive, very elusive. And people who come to power, it seems they have been more concerned with exacerbating our divisions rather than healing our wounds. Think about that. if we are the inclusive society, the inclusive government we say we are, then all people, individually and collectively, should have a say. Everybody ought to have a say if we are this all-inclusive people. There should be no one excluded from the paths to power. No one. No one excluded for reasons of status, income, gender, or any of the other extraneous litany of things which keep people from rising to the top. We've got a lot of things still in us, historically, traditionally, customarily, which prevent us from joining together in community. I regret to say that, but it is so. We don't like to admit that. We would rather beat our breasts, salute the flag, and say that we are all one, all inclusive, liberty and justice for all. We would like to believe that. We say it. We say it, but reality gives the lie to what we say. Reality gives the lie to our denial. Now, what reality am I talking about now? The Commission on Minority Participation in Education and American Life was established last fall. It was established by the American Council on Education and the Education Commission of the States. The impetus for the formation of that commission was a shared, deep concern over the faltering pace of minority advancement. That report was entitled 1/3 of a Nation. The report took its title from something Franklin Roosevelt said more than 50 years ago. I see 1/3 of a nation, ill-clothed, ill-housed. That's where the 1/3 of a nation comes from in that title. But let me read to you the jarring indictment in the introduction of that report. It says, quote, "America is moving backward, not forward, in its efforts to achieve the full participation of minority citizens in the life and prosperity of the nation, in education, employment, income, health, longevity, and other basic measures of individual and social well-being. Gaps persist, and in some cases, the gaps are widening between members of minority groups and the majority population." The report continued, "This is an intolerable conclusion. We call for a renewed commitment," the report said, "a renewed commitment by all of the American people to the idea of equality and the inclusion of all people in the productive, the constructive, the substantive life of the nation." This call from this commission, most recent, this last fall, is not a call for new policy. The call is for a reinvigorated new commitment, a reinvigorated public policy, a public policy which would include everybody in it and leave no one out. This is what is requested. There are those who question the sincerity of anyone calling for a renewed commitment to the inclusion of all people. And I will tell you why there is suspicion in the response that others outside looking at the people who draft reports, why is there some suspicion about sincerity in the call for renewal? The suspicion is there as a result of the failure of those who draft the charter to consult the very people who will be affected by whatever action is taken in their behalf. The people who are affected want to be consulted about ways and means to bring about implementation of a renewed public policy. Any effort leading to a successful outcome of this renewed policy must include, in the planning, the people who are going to be impacted by the policy. Initially, groups and single individuals who are going to be most intimately affected by the policy must be included in the planning stages. These persons who are going to be affected can impact and influence the outcome. Now, how can a group, blacks, Hispanics, whoever, how can a group traditionally on the outside of the policy process, how is that group going to affect the decision in such a broad-based policy as inclusion of all people in the workings of this country? How can the outs influence the ins? What clout can they bring to persuade others to include them from planning to completion? They can't bring money because they don't have wealth. They can't bring status because they don't have that. What they can bring is the possibility of success or failure. The outs can cause a policy to fail if they do not desire to cooperate with those who are implementing the policy and trying to bring about an outcome. Success or failure can be determined by those who are outside. Their cooperation or refusal to cooperate can make the difference in the successful outcome of a policy. The outs must make it clear that there can be no success without them. That, you might say, sounds threatening. No, it's not really threatening. It is the only reality the outs can bring with them. We will cooperate if you let us be a part of the initial process from beginning to end, but if you don't include us, count us out. That is the stick which the outs can present to the ends. If you want to be successful, talk to us. If you want it to fail, exclude us. The policy can be implemented of inclusion of everybody if the participants trust each other, mutual trust, and are willing to cooperate with each other. The policy-making process should be based on mutual trust and cooperation in pursuit of that common end, that common goal, that unity of purpose. Distrust and lack of cooperation equals stalemate and failure. Robert Reich, who is at the Kennedy School, wrote a chapter, edited a book some Kennedy School professors recently produced. The title of the book, The Power of Public Ideas. Robert Reich was the editor, and Robert Reich wrote the chapter which is entitled Policymaking in a Democracy. In the chapter, Reich says that policy is made one of two ways: intermediation of interest groups on the one hand, and maximization of net benefits on the other hand. On the one hand, intermediation of interest groups, that mode requires extraordinary negotiating skills and interpersonal relationships handled with care. On the other hand, the policy mode of net maximization, net benefits, that requires the cold calculation of who wins and who loses. Where does the researcher come in when we are having this policy made in one mode or the other? The researcher may report what he sees, what he knows, all that is knowable, the nuances which may be encountered. The researcher may help clarify the policy question, explain possible alternatives. The researcher can crunch the numbers, but that's about all the researcher can do. The researcher, in my opinion, has little impact on policy outcome. So can we become one nation, indivisible? I think the answer to that question is we must become such a nation. We don't really have a choice. We must become such a nation because the alternative consigns us to a nation of permanent unrest, permanent instability. That, in my opinion, is un-American.
Barbara Jordan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This lecture was sponsored by the Friends of the LBJ Library. For more information, write the Lyndon Baines Johnson Foundation, 2313 Red River Street, Austin, Texas, 78705, or call area code 512-478-7829.